Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having a great day. We're going to take a quick look here at a crypto market overview for Bitcoin, as well as some important factors to recognize here when it comes to volume. Okay, so stick around, be sure to learn as much as you can. That's the whole point of this, obviously. So I appreciate you hitting the like button, commenting below if you get a chance. Let me know, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? Let's start here first of all with the ETF inflows here. Basically, this is the inflow outflow for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we can see it's dissipating and coming down. Now, generally speaking, this isn't a bad thing. It's still good to have the ETF inflows, of course. We want that to be positive. But as it continues to taper off, it shows that the price action is reaching its top. Okay, so oftentimes when you see this happen, it'll start to come back down as a result. The last time we saw this type of price action, though, was back in November, if I recall correctly, right there, November, December, we had the highest point, very similar to here. So if you recall, in November, we saw that drop off shortly after in December, January. Okay, so not proposing we're going to drop super hard. Just want you to know that ETF inflows kind of tapering off here is an early sign of weakness there. And when we look at altcoin season index 2, this is increasing as well. So keep in mind, altcoins are still looking pretty solid for the moment. So don't go running for the hills and selling everything. But on the same accord, if these support levels don't hold and Bitcoin runs lower than the 115, 114K CME gap, then we might have a problem on our hands. Either way, altcoins are still in good shape. And I cover those daily too. Be sure to check out my altcoin daily analysis so you understand kind of more specifically what that's looking like. The last thing I want to touch on here is fear and greed index. And I touched on this earlier today. I want you to note that anytime we see the greed reach the 70s to 80s, it's oftentimes the price for Bitcoin goes sideways from there. So best way to describe it is if you kind of look at, when we hit the greed index going super high, that's when Bitcoin, yes, it continues higher for a little bit, but it'll inevitably go sideways and down, right? At least we've seen that for a couple of cycles here, or at least a couple of years in a row. Having said that, our greed is high, price of Bitcoin is high right now. We really just need the greed index to taper off, similar to RSIs on larger timeframes, for Bitcoin to leg up again. But I think it's too premature to propose we're going to go much higher on this initial phase, just based on the fact that we're kind of topping out on some of those back end indications. Let's talk about kind of the front end here. This is a smaller time frame. Generally, I don't trade low time frames anymore. I'm not day trading anymore. I've got a day trading pot for that specifically that runs in the back end. What I'm referring to here, though, is that the smaller time frames here is kind of a good indication of what to look for. So as the volume starts to dissipate, you can see the price action trying to go up with the volume going down. That's always construed as a bearish type of sign. So for example, we got high volume on the way down, right? You can see that reflected here, but low volume on the way up. Right, the volume's tapering off, kind of running below its average. So generally speaking, when you see that, the likelihood of breakdown is higher, especially with a descending trend here, that we're still continuing lower with the potential for that triangle pattern to play out. So just be mindful that is happening as well. So I do personally feel that we're going to go down a bit lower. So let's go ahead and talk about what I mean by that, and kind of jump out to the larger time frame. So first things first, let's go ahead and just go with the daily time frame here, help understand where we're at. We do have a CME gap between 114.4 and 115.7, I believe it is. In fact, we can see that reflected here on the CME chart. Just so you understand, there's also a fair value gap, of course, in the larger time frames. So we could even see as low as 112, 113. So just be mindful there. Not telling you to short to that level per se. Just because we have a short open doesn't mean you should take one either. We average in when the price went up. Okay, but for right now, the overall sentiment is that could very well and should get hit soon. Most CME gaps get filled. Now, do all fair value gaps get filled? Not exactly. Those are different. CME gaps are a little bit more, I wouldn't say manipulated, but they're more controlled based on it being, CME futures. Of course, it's a very, very heavily traded scenario there. All that being said, when we look at the daily time frame here, we want to recognize that we're still above our ascending trend line. We're still over moving averages. I'm not by any means telling you we're going to drop like a rock or we're bearish at all. We're still very bullish. In fact, taking a short is a high risk trade, but it just makes sense that these lower levels are likely to get filled here soon. Those are my speculations. I'd love to hear yours. Why don't you comment below? Tell me what you think. Other than that, we did lose 70 in the RSI. This is generally construed as a sell signal for your high profit position. You should be in profit. You should have secured profits by now. Try not to be one of those greedy folks that tries to hold a 200 or 300,000 on a high leverage trade. You're going to get eaten up on fees. Spot bags are different stories, but for right now, it's not a good call to consider a long position, in my personal opinion, just based on these early signs. Now, I hope I'm wrong and the price goes up. Don't get me wrong, I'm not, not trolling Bitcoin, but I just want you to recognize these short-term indications are likely reversal motivators, so to speak, for the whales in the back end. Do I think that we're going to bounce or pivot here in the relative near future? Yeah. In fact, if we do fill a CME gap at 114, we're going to likely be able to bounce off this ascending trend line and still continue to maintain above our way, or go back along our merry way, if you will. But just some things to be mindful of. Let's jump over to High Block Capital. Go ahead and pick up, take a look, or rather, take a look at Bitcoin charts. Pick up some additional information on the back end here, just kind of get perspective where we're at. So when it comes to liquidation, it's important to recognize that there is motivation for the price to go in that direction. And as we can see here, there's a chunk of liquidation between 115 and 116,000 is a close approximate. In fact, our take profit target, I think, is 115.5. So that should put us right in that spot there. Keep in mind, liquidation does imply people are taking more longs. But once more, you see that shift in dynamic, which we're seeing here. Our liquidation long delta is almost at break even, up from 45 billion yesterday. That's a pretty significant shift in momentum. This tells me a lot that we're likely to continue lower based on that sentiment. Having said that, we're going to take a look here at the bigger picture and recognize 118 is that open interest area of accumulation. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means that's our local high, or our new high. And you can kind of see here, reflect on the charts, this is 118 right here, this guy. That is the level in which the price action rejected. Okay, so we're now in a descending type of trend, and the likelihood of the price action going lower is higher once more. Depends on how you look at it, of course, but there are some triangle patterns that are pretty obvious to me, and just some things to kind of pay attention to. So no matter how you look at it here, I think that we're going to bottom out in the relative near future. I don't think we're going to see sub 100,000 by any stretch. I think 110,000 at this point is still even a little premature to say that that's going to happen. But I think 114, 116 seems like a very logical pivot point for us. At that point, I'll be very excited to see or consider along with the majority of altcoins. For the moment, I'm holding off and or considering some tight shorts between now and then. What are your thoughts? Why don't you comment below? Let me know. Be sure to check out BitUnix too, folks. We got an awesome deposit reward bonus and some really good volume going here with a cumulative prize pool. So these guys are excellent. No KYC or VPN required, so anyone who trades in the States will benefit from this. And also make sure to find benefit over at our Twitter, Telegram, or Discord too. We got an awesome community. It's a great place to trade and to learn and to grow together. So let's all work together to find our common goal of being profitable and awesome traders. Hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks again for your time. Take care.